So I've been wrong this whole time. Damn it.
It's not the end of the world. Because
No, because people are still getting benefit, I appreciate, but it does have, Steve, this is what I said before, it does have a sport-specific role. Yeah. I can't believe I've been so wrong for so long. Welcome to the ATP Project. You're with your hosts, Steve and Jeff. Steve, we're talking about creatine.
I know, I'm pumped.
Oh, no, that's terrible. It's actually citrulline.
I know.
That gives you the pump. I mean, mind you, like creatine can actually, hold more water inside the muscle, and it can help with strength, and it helps with power, and it is one of the most commonly used supplements in the world. In fact, I don't know what the statistics are, but if I was to sort of have an educated guess, I would say that creatine is probably maybe the second most used supplement in the world. In fact, we should probably fact check that because protein is probably the number one.
Yeah.
Creatine is probably number two.
Yeah, it's huge.
But Steve, do you want to give your scientific, because a lot of people listening to this know about creatine. Is it good? Is it bad? Can it make your hair fall out? And I know that we've got some FAQs that we're going to ask.
There are some FAQs.
And we'll get to this. Does creatine have the boogeyman negatives? And there's ones for kidneys. Does it cause kidney damage? Can it create scarring on the kidneys? Can it make your hair fall out? And there's some other ones we'll get to.
There's heaps of them.
We're going to get to some FAQs at the end.
Yes, absolutely.
But Steve, what is the scientific thing about creatine?
Sure, it's an interesting one because creatine is found in everybody's body right now. Whether they take it or not, it's in your body.
Naturally, we create creatine,
we create creatine.
I heard, Steve, you correct me where I'm wrong, and this is missed because, I started taking creatine back in the 90s. Wow. I started selling creatine in 2002 when I opened my my supplement store, and it was one of my absolute favourite go-to products. But creatine, I heard that you produce about a gram of creatine a day. I don't know if that's true or not. And that
varies.
Realistically, you need to be eating meat and especially shellfish and things like that to actually. That was like the conditional sort of precursors to it. Very difficult to make from vegetables. But I don't know if that's urban myth or if that's true. Is that true?
It's true.
Okay.
And the reason being is because creatine is involved in ATP production. Okay.
Right? Again, here we are, ATP science.
I know.
It's a play on words. Because, again, when we started ATP, originally talking about ATP Science, the company, that was back in 2010, adenosine triphosphate, which is what it stands for, it's a 3-phosphate molecule.
It is.
And it's that when you're training and when you're working out, when the muscle is contracting, that splits and that creates a diphosphate. And it's that splitting that actually creates the energy, if you like, right?
See? When you split a bond of anything, it creates energy.
That's right, like splitting the atom.
Well,
but on a micro.
You split the bond between the atoms. If you split the atom, you're in trouble.
But no. But in terms of ATP Science, it stands for Advanced Technology in Pharmacology, but it was a kind of a play on words for energy. It's like ATP Science, so it's the science of energy.
Well, when you split that thing, it releases energy. You've got to get that phosphate back on there again.
That's right,
and that's what creatine does. Put very simply,
it helps to recycle. So that splits, creates the energy, and that actually helps with the reattachment. Now it happens naturally, but if you've got creatine, it recycles faster.
Correct.
So, and again, that's what gives you. So if you're running, sprinting, any anaerobic activity, the more creatine, and this is the theory, Steve, and you correct me where I'm wrong, where my science is outdated, because I'm harking back to the the 90s here and the 2000s, is that the more creatine that you have in your body, the quicker that those phosphates reattach, and also the more ATP you have available in the muscle for which obviously helps strength, and it also helps with recovery because it's hygroscopic, meaning it attracts moisture, nutrients. If you've got nitrogen in your blood from protein and from amino acids and things like that, it's helping to draw it in. So it actually has sort of a couple of different ways that it helps to maintain and build lean muscle tissue.
Absolutely. Okay. The first way it does is, you correctly point out, it makes more ATP quicker. So therefore, you've got more energy to do more reps. So
put the muscle under more load.
So let's say you're doing curls and you at 10, the last ones, where you're shaking and you fail. Well, if you have creatine, you might be able to do 11 or even 12, 10 to 20% performance increase.
And the curls are important because the curls get the girls or boys?
Guns out. What's it called? Guns out. Summer?
Buns out. Buns out. Suns
out.
Suns out. Buns out. Steve, I don't know where you're going.
Suns out. Guns out. I think is what they say.
I'm just like, I've been doing it the wrong side.
Yeah. Well, buns out. Whatever you prefer, I guess.
That's my best side.
Yeah.
My backside.
So this creatine stuff is obviously our bodies make it. From a couple of amino acids, arginine and glycine. So you've probably heard of those things. So we can make it, get a spin-off of ornithine, and basically you can make this creatine in your body, and you can make it at a rate-limiting amount.
Right.
So if you take some more, you get more performance.
Right.
Now, this was first discovered around 1832.
Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah. And it's funny because I think we were having sort of just a really quick mention about it yesterday. So when was it? I thought it was, it's back in the 1800s, right? And we got a picture of the dude. This guy is a dude.
He's the best-looking scientist, I think. He's the most science-looking scientist I've ever seen in my life. If Matt,
through the magic of television, for those listening on YouTube, you're putting up a picture of him right now, right?
Yep.
I mean, look at this guy with his white beard.
Just awesome looking.
He does. He kind of looks like, for those that are listening on Spotify or on it's looks like kind of like a crazy Albert Einstein, really.
It does look like a very crazy Albert Einstein, but he was crazy enough to sort of figure out that in animal tissue, and that's what they used then, that there were certain animals that had different abilities, physical abilities.
Right.
And he was trying to find out why. What's in the muscle that makes their muscles better? And he found this stuff called creatine. And so creatine is in these muscles, and there's more of them in wild animals than there are in my cat or Biscuit. Okay,
right.
because
Biscuit's my sausage dog, my miniature long-haired sausage dog. Yeah,
and my cat does bugger all day, sits around with a flat face. That's all it does. It doesn't do anything else. So he's got very low creatine.
And why is that? Why is there more creatine in wild animals than domestic? Is it diet?
Yeah, it's diet because they eat more. Guess what?
Meat.
Yep, they eat more meat.
But what about vegan? What about vegan animals? Like,
well, they are a little bit more lethargic typically.
But what about like bulls and stuff like that? Right? I mean, do they have a lower amount of creatine in their muscle?
They do. They make their own creatine, but they have lower amounts, and that's why they're not as active. You've got to remember we see bulls that are, I was going to say a circus, but a rodeo, where they're jumping around doing crazy things for 8 seconds, right?
Yeah.
And that's not a bull. A bull is someone that sits around, walks around, plods around, eats grass all day.
Right.
They're not that active.
Right.
So they don't have the creatine, but they do make their own creatine, and we can eat that meat and get creatine from the meat because there is creatine in beef.
This is what certainly, if any of you have watched the documentary with Arnold Schwarzenegger for bodybuilding, what's it called again?
Pumping Iron?
Pumping Iron.
Yeah.
Right, so
70s.
It's funny. I remember watching the 25th anniversary of that in 2002. Actually, it was 2001 when I had myself, and it was Anyway, but the interesting thing is that Serge Nubret.
Oh yeah, Serge. Yeah.
So he had one of the most unbelievable physiques. If you're talking about physiques here, he used to, and again, I'm going off memory here, so if you fact check me and I'm wrong, please forgive me. But I'm pretty sure that Serge used to focus on eating red meat because he believed that it helped with his performance and specifically the creatine that he got out of it.
Yeah, of course.
So because there was no creatine supplementation that I'm aware of back in the 60s and 70s and even 80s, I don't think creatine really became a popular supplement until the 90s.
Yeah, it became popular in the 90s with the Olympics with Linford Christie. He was the famous guy who had it. Yeah,
I think he was in his 40s. He was, I think, still one of the fastest men on the planet.
Yeah, he was a hurdle or a 400-metre runner?
No, 100-metre runner.
100-metre
Linford Christie. I remember watching him, man.
Okay.
This guy was an amazing English athlete, just absolutely brilliant. Talking about that, so I remember, Steve, my very first purchase of creatine monohydrate.
Oh.
Way back in the day. Way back in...
Well, it wasn't 1832 from this dude?
It's Steve, I'm not your age.
Oh, right, okay, sorry. That's right.
It was back in the 90s. Now, I'm thinking, and again, I'm not sure, and I actually not that I normally mention other brands, but it was actually Masashi, which were considered to be the gold standard of amino acids back in the day.
Yeah.
They're a bit different now. They're sort of more of a chemist brand. But... they had this white tub with green lines on it. I still remember it. And I went in, and I went into a chemist because there weren't really supplement stores around. And I'm thinking it was mid-90s. I'm thinking it was probably maybe 94, 95, somewhere. I can't remember, right? I can't remember exactly. And I remember going into this chemist, and it was sitting on the shelf, and I'm pretty sure it was $160 for 300 grams of non-micronized creatine. I kid you not. I kid you not. And I remember bringing it home, and it was fluffy.
Yeah.
It was kind of like it almost sit on the top of water, like it was sort of light and fluffy, not micronized like it is now. We've got 200 micro mesh and what have you, with tiny little particles and all the rest of it. But yeah, it's funny, right? $160 for, I think it was about 300 grams. And yeah, white tub with green lines on it. So
because you're right, eating meat is great for creatine if you want to get your natural creatine. But
Sure.
and because you've got to remember, there's the 3 C's in meat that are great for performance. Creatine monohydrate's one.
Yep.
Carnosine.
Yes.
Is another one that
which
buffers
is
against acid buildup.
That's right. I mean, you get that from beta-alanine, correct?
Beta-alanine forms with histidine to form carnosine in the body.
Yep.
And then you've got the carnitine in meat, which helps.
Carnitine palmitoyl transferase.
It upregulates that enzyme for
which
fat
is
burning.
good. Which is for fat burning. That's exactly right. So look, meat is actually brilliant, and you talk about the thermic effects of food and all that sort of stuff. So like, meat is great unless you're a vegan or a vegetarian, and that's not good at all. But I mean, for those of us that eat meat, good quality lean meat provides some real benefits for training.
And I've got a little bit of bad news for the vegans.
Yeah.
We the name creatine. You know where that comes from?
No.
It's Greek for meat.
Greek for meat.
Yeah. Kreat is meat in Greek.
Yeah.
And so that's where you get the word creatine.
Oh, okay.
Because it's first extracted from meat by our mate scientists here, Michael Eugene was the scientist. It's the good-looking scientist that we had on the screen before.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, so he first extracted it from meat. So he just named it, Krias is, Greek for meat, so we'll call it creatine.
Cool. Steve-O.
Yes.
Now for a word from our sponsors. Which is Zeus Juice.
Zeus Juice. Remember Zeus?
I do.
He's one of the gods.
He is. It's kind of in keeping with the whole, Alpha Mars, Alpha Jupiter, Venus, kind of the whole celestial body and all the rest of it's kind of fun. Yeah. So Zeus Juice was a formulation that I created because we had a really, really good formula with hydroxyproline in it for vegans called vegan aminos. The funny thing is that we had people come back and go, I'm not a vegan, I can't take that.
Yes, that's right.
Do you eat vegetables? So anyway, we reformulated, we brought the product out, and we actually listened to some of our good customers in terms of the size and what have you. So Zeus Juice is an amino acid blend, Steve, and it's got essential amino acids, which obviously include branched chain amino acids as well too. We put absorption enhancing agents called estrogen, which is an absolutely brilliant product as well too, and all of the aminos are plant-based. Now, I remember...
What about hydroxyproline? Is that plant-based?
Yes, it is. It actually comes from moss, Steve.
Yes.
Which is interesting and very, very freaking expensive, which is great because a lot of the people who are vegans out there, they want an amino acid that they can trust. Now, ATP Science is built on trust, and we absolutely, our word is our bond. It is all plant-based. It's so funny because when we brought out the original vegan aminos, someone else, we only use vegan... it's like,
right.
Lying pieces of scum. But the funny thing is, because it's freaking expensive, unless you were doing that from the beginning, you'd be going, we only use plant-based. Now, it is becoming more popular, but one of the things that we do as well too is we throw in an incredibly expensive compound called hydroxyproline in there, which is conditionally essential for vegans because you typically get that from meat.
Yeah, and from collagen. It's very high in collagen. Yeah. So if you're not eating collagen or meat, then you're not getting hydroxyproline levels. You can sort of make your own out of proline, but it's much more difficult.
So there's a full... I'm just reading here. So if I look... I'm not going to try and... So 7 grams of... branched chain amino acids at a 2:1:1 ratio. And the reason we went with 2:1:1, it's funny because everyone was going to 4:1:1 and 8:1:1, and it's like, no, just it's found in the body in a 2:1:1 ratio. We just give the body back what it needs, right? So that's hydroxyleucine, leucine, and valine, which are really, really, really good, and again, really good for mTOR building muscle tissue. But the full spectrum of amino acids, hydroxyproline for collagen support, estrogen for faster absorption, and it's all natural. We do not use
sucralose. Any sucralose?
No, Steve. I love it. No. Get away from me.
None of that.
None of that stuff. So we only use natural colours, flavours, and preservatives. So everything is actually from nature. I think some of our stuff comes from like a sweet potato, like a yellow colour. Like it's natural. So look, if you're looking for to enhance, your amino acid profile, for whatever reason that may be, and It's for guys and girls and other. So Zeus juice is not just for the guys.
No.
It's for everyone.
I drink it because it tastes great.
And you're another.
Yeah, I'm another. That's right. Yeah,
Because
right.
you certainly are not a male.
No.
So, I think in terms of it's for everyone.
Yes.
Everybody.
I'm an it day.
Yeah, it day. Thanks, cousin it. Anyway, thanks, guys. So check out the Zeus juice.
Love it more than just a BCAA.
Oh, that sounds like a tagline. More than just a BCAA.
Yes.
Good one, Steve.
So there you go.
Interesting.
So very interesting history of that. And then, of course, as you correctly point out, in the 70s and 80s and especially 90s,
Yep.
the Olympic athletes could afford it.
Yep.
But the average Joe six-pack, it was very expensive, as you correctly point out.
I don't even know how effective it was back then. And again, it's funny because we've had Richard Kreider on the show, who's the godfather of creatine.
Got a paper of his.
We'll talk because he's really, if you want to sort of look to who championed it, who made the science available on it, made it indisputable. And even today, probably I reckon the number two. If you're looking to build muscle tissue, protein is king. You can't build muscle unless you've got, obviously, your hormones, testosterone, incredibly important. Obviously, you've got your zinc and you've got your other cofactors as well too. But as far as a dedicated supplement, things that you're not getting from your diet, creatine, I think, is probably one of the best supplements, bang for your buck, that you can possibly buy.
Well, absolutely. Even in the 18th century, when they started giving it to animals, they had.
How did they synthesize it? Just out of meat?
Out of meat.
And make it into a powder?
They extracted it out of meat. Yeah.
Wow.
Our mate scientist, Eugene.
And dry it and bake it into a powder?
Yeah. But
really?
he gave 10 grams to animals and it increased nitrogen retention.
Wow.
So he found that was the factor that was in meat that caused the nitrogen to be retained and all that sort of stuff, and the performance increases for wild animals. So
it's funny, Steve, because again, I know that we're sort of doing this, behind the scenes 12-week transformation.
Yes.
One of the first things that I put on there, so I've got my collagen protein for my nitrogen retention, for building muscle tissue. I've got a few other things as well too, but creatine right up there.
It's got to be.
It's I think it was the second or third product that I chose. So,
it has to be. I mean, it's so good. I mean, yes, I've got lots of papers sitting around me. For those who are watching, they can see them, but they're all peer-reviewed studies. And the one from Richard Kreider has.
And sorry, just for those that are listening that go, oh, nitrogen retention. What's nitrogen retention? Sorry, we should break that down.
Sure. There's a thing called amino acids, right?
Yeah.
And they've got an acid group and they've got an amine group. And the amine group is NH4, and that's got a nitrogen in it. So you can measure the amount of protein in that by the nitrogen levels, because all amino acids have the acid, the carboxylic acid, and the amino group, the amine, which is the nitrogen.
Nitrogen makes things grow.
It does.
They use it on plants and things like that as well too. So specifically, is nitrogen like a biomarker that that amino acids are present, or is it actually the compound that makes things grow?
No, it's a biomarker, because it's one of the markers you can measure for in the urine, and you can measure for in other places to see how much you're retaining. You know how much is going in, and you measure how much is coming out. You measure it in stool and all sorts of other things. There's never really much nitrogen in your stool, because about 90-something% of protein gets absorbed, unless you've got a pancreatic dysfunction. And you can measure pancreatic dysfunction through the stool if you look for protein in the stool. There shouldn't be protein in the stool. And that's another myth, because there were people saying years ago, you can only absorb 20 grams of protein at once.
Okay.
That's for another podcast, but that's a massive myth.
No. This is definitely for this podcast.
Is it?
I love it, because 20 grams of protein.
Yeah.
Okay, let me bring it about its cousin. When we first started learning about creatine, they were saying that you needed to load on creatine.
Oh, yeah.
And so do you want to get into the fundamentals of how to use creatine, the myths, and then we can get into some of these FAQs. In fact, Steve, do you want to read through some of these FAQs, and then we can get into this, and we'll see which ones overlap, and we can answer, because the hair loss one is very, very. You're touching near and dear to my heart, Steve.
It grows all parts of your body. Does it grow most parts?
Ooh. Does it grow the
important part, the 1% part, or 1.5%? I mean, if you
I don't know what you're talking about, Steve.
We will get to that. That part we can't say on the
old fella.
Yes,
does it?
The very old fella in my case.
So we're gonna find out. So you're gonna tell me at the end of you're gonna make me wait to the end.
I'll wait.
If creatine can make.
Yes. But I'm going to...
Mr. Tinkles.
Yeah, Mr. Tinkles. Is
that your name?
That's what I call it in the bedroom.
Stanley Power Tool.
Max powers.
Yeah. If it can make it grow.
Yeah.
Oh, that's interesting. Or if it can make your hair fall out.
Yeah.
All right. What are some of the other?
All right.
Other
There's now this is from a paper, so I'll just read the paper out there.
Yeah.
It says common questions and misconceptions about creatine supplementation. What does the scientific evidence really show? This is published in the Journal of International Society of Sports Nutrition, and one of the authors that we know is Richard Kreider.
Oh, there you go.
And Scott Forbes.
He is the authority. If you see anything with Richard Kreider's name, talking about most anything, because he's a pretty smart bloke, but specifically the grandfather of creatine, you know that it's a quality paper, it's a quality study.
Yes, exactly. So
University of Texas, was it?
Yeah, he is. Yeah. So he's so this paper is really interesting, and it does go through all these questions.
Yeah.
And so the first one is, does creatine lead to water retention? And you say true, false, or a grey area.
Maybe.
Yeah, I'm going to call this a maybe.
I agree.
Because it does increase muscular volume.
Sure.
Which drags water with it.
Yes.
So it's partially true.
And this is part of the philosophy, Steve, if we can break this question down in terms of how some people theorised that creatine worked, is that they said it actually improved leverage between the cells. Now, I don't know. This is just what some people hypothesise. Now, I always said, well, from my understanding, it's to do with the energy, with the ATP and the recycling of the ATP and putting more into your system. It's like putting, instead of having one stick of dynamite, you've got 3 sticks of dynamite.
Yep.
And those dynamites regenerate themselves really quickly, so you can keep exploding.
That's exactly right. It regenerates.
But what they were saying is that because the body holds more water, and as I said before, creatine monohydrate is hydroscopic, meaning it attracts moisture and water. And if your diet is rich in protein, which is high in nitrogen amino acids, it's sucking that protein into the muscle cell, where it's actually helping to repair damaged and broken, muscle fibers, which is giving you, like welding, more muscle fiber for more strength.
Correct.
What some people have said, and again, I heard it, I was agnostic to it, but what they said is part of the reason that creatine works is because it's holding more water in your cells. So if you can imagine, like a balloon, it goes from a raisin to a balloon. You've actually got more leverage. You've actually got more ability to lift based on leverage. Steve, saying it doesn't sound true to me, but I don't know.
It gives you more power, and that's because it can regenerate your ATP quicker.
Yeah, sure.
So
that's biochemical.
That is
not
absolutely
physiological.
No, not physiological.
You know what I mean? Like in terms of they're saying because you've got a bigger volume in the cell, it's fuller. Therefore, it actually creates more leverage. I'm just
I know what you mean.
Have you heard that before?
I have heard that.
Yeah.
And so it does increase intracellular water, because there's 2 types of water, intra and extracellular water.
Well, extracellular water is bad. For the most part, you don't want that.
No.
But intracellular water,
correct.
Good.
Yeah, it's good because it gives you that full muscle feeling, and most people want that.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe some women may not, but most of the people listening to this podcast will want fuller muscles.
Well, I think tone is nice.
Yeah.
I mean, it doesn't mean you're going to take creatine and turn it to Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Nope, I wish.
Or Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Yes,
but I think in terms of muscle tone, in terms of recovery, strength, I mean, anyone who's training, male or female, should take creatine if you're trying to increase muscle mass, because it's non-hormonal. It's not going to have an impact on your testosterone or estrogen. Is it, Steve?
Well, that's the next question in this paper.
Well, okay, let me frame it this way. I can't see how... So ask the question.
Okay, now this is a quote from the paper. You're a genius at this.
I am a genius. Thank you, Steve.
Is creatine...
You're the only person that actually ever says that.
No, it's the greatest segue ever.
Oh.
Is creatine an anabolic steroid? That's word for word.
Well, interesting. I mean, it is anabolic, but steroid affecting hormones. Yeah. I have to say no, and I think this is a really big myth, because I remember when I was selling supplements, I had, mums come in for their 15, 16-year-old sons, not too many daughters coming in using it at that point. They're probably the ones using plastic dumbbells, because if you lift weight, mind you, how far have we come from girls who actually train now doing deadlifts and have got beautiful physiques?
I know. I mean, you think of the 80s where we had the let's get physical, and that's what girls did.
Yeah,
the boys went to the gym.
Yeah. So in terms of supplementation, and mind you, there's some catch-outs here, because a lot of people don't know. They go, if it's good for the guys, it's good for the girls. Yeah. In this case, I believe, Steve, and you correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah, sure.
If I'm making a fool out of myself based on legacy
I'll
thinking,
tell you.
Yeah, you tell me. But no, there's no way that creatine affects hormones. directly. I mean, with having more muscle mass, can that improve? I think I don't believe that it would have an impact on testosterone directly. It's not like a steroid.
Correct. It's not a steroid at all. You've got to remember, steroids come from a precursor hormone called cholesterol. It's made in the liver.
Yep.
And most people have heard of cholesterol.
Yep.
Okay. Cholesterol then turns into, DHEA and testosterone, and then through to estradiol, and then, cortisol and pregnenolone and progesterone comes out of all that too. So this has got nothing to do with that pathway whatsoever.
No.
This is found in foods anyway.
Safe for guys.
Yep.
Safe for girls. So long as you're not, and again for children, the reason why we say you've got to be over 15 or with adult supervision is because kids can be silly and maybe not drink enough water and some other things as well too that we'll get into in a minute. As far as I'm concerned, creatine is a fantastic supplement. Does not affect the hormones in guys and girls. It can only enhance performance. The water should be, if it's a quality creatine, there should be no. There should be no subcutaneous water. There should be no intracellular. Almost all of the water should be inside the muscles, which is helping to regenerate, helping with ATP, helping with strength, helping with recovery.
Exactly.
Yeah,
that's exactly right. So it's nothing. I mean, this is more like an amino acid.
Yeah.
This structure is like protein, if you want to keep it really simple. I mean, it's made from 2 amino acids.
Yeah.
So it's not nothing to do with steroids.
And the question we have to ask, because it might not be there as well too, is loading, because we kind of alluded to it, but we didn't ask the question.
Okay. I think that's
well, if we can get to it. So just here's a couple for a bit later, right?
All right.
But is loading necessary? I mean, 120 kilo male versus a 60 female, is there a ratio? What is the amount that you need to take to get optimal results? So let's come back to that.
All right, we will, because there's loads on dosages and that sort of thing.
All right.
Now, this is a tricky question, and it's not as easy as it first sounds. Does creatine cause kidney damage or renal dysfunction?
Okay, so again, this was a big one that I used to get asked a lot.
Yep.
Directly, no. And if you don't have any problems with regards to kidneys and all the rest of it, you should absolutely be fine. The problem can come from if you don't consume enough water, but that's a problem for anybody. Now, creatine competes or holds more water intracellularly, so there's less sort of swashing around in the body to remove what have you. So, and mind you, it's is osmosis the right word? I mean, it's coming in and out, right? So it's not like it just holds in the water and then it stagnates and it stays there. But your body does require more water. So I always used to say, obviously you need to make sure that you're properly hydrated, and that's kind of what I'll leave it at. Now, most people, actually, funnily enough, Steve, and I think you know this as well too, walk around in a state of dehydration.
Most of them do.
Most people do. We don't drink enough water, and again, the old adage was, I'll drink 2 litres of water. I think there's actually a mathematical way that you work out exactly how much water that you need, Steve. Do you know what it is?
Oh, it depends on your activity level and how hot it is. There's so many factors involved in it.
But basically, you should be drinking more water. I forget what I used to have. I think I used to say it was like a litre of water for every 25 kilos. But at the same time, if you drink too much water, Steve,
not good.
and if you're not active, you don't need it, you can actually flush away a lot of your vitamins, right?
Absolutely, and then in your minerals. I mean, you can get a hyponatremia.
So that's a good question then. So how do you know if you're properly hydrated?
Well, there's a way you can measure in your blood, and you measure the refraction.
But without that,
basically, really simply, is you got to pee every 2 hours.
That's a good one.
Yeah.
I've never heard that.
Yeah, about every 2 hours, because that means your kidneys, because your kidneys are the greatest thing of regulating your fluid levels there is known. It'll hang on to water so you should be peeing about every 2 hours. Now, people say, you've got to look at the colour of the pee, and that's partly true. Unless you have a load of riboflavin or B2, you can have very orange pee and still not be dehydrated.
Right, yes, I've heard that. So if your pee is more yellow, it means it's concentrating what?
Riboflavin. But then you could just take a supplement of riboflavin.
Yeah, but let's say if you're not, let's say if you're even vitamin deficient and your pee goes like yellow, even orange what's going on there?
It stinks a lot. Yeah. It just means that the kidneys are saying, no, we need to hang on to water. Right. We'll get rid of all these minerally weirdy stuff, urea and all that, and we'll hang on to the water though. So it concentrates your urine down, and that means you're getting dehydrated.
And the interesting thing about being properly hydrated as well too, Steve, and I forget what the percentage is, but you dramatically decrease your strength if you're dehydrated.
Oh, absolutely.
One of the best things that you can do is be properly hydrated before you try and lift.
Yeah, it's only about 2% too. You only have to be dehydrated by 2%.
Yes, and it has a massive impact on strength.
Absolutely. And
I forget what it is, but it's like, I think it's like 10% or something crazy like that, reduction in strength.
You got to remember, and people say 2% is not much, but that's 1.5 litres of my body weight. because I'm about 80 kilos.
Right.
So that's a lot of water to be dehydrated, and it's easy to become dehydrated.
Yeah.
You know, we live in Queensland, the weather's pretty inclement now, but if you're, you know, I help a mate out with his landscape business on weekends sometimes, and you're mowing from job to job to job to job if he's full on, and you just sweat, you really struggle to keep up with the fluid. So if you've got a job like that, or a roofer or something like that, you can really struggle.
And again, if you're sweating a lot as well too, you've got to be making sure you're putting the electrolytes back in as well. And that's a big one.
It is.
I mean, the people that died on the Kokoda Trail, they were drinking water, but they died from dehydration because they were electrolyte depleted.
Yeah.
Which is magnesium, sodium, potassium.
Yeah. And calcium. Yeah, so you've got to be careful of those. Hyponatremia is the most common cause of death.
Yeah.
And hypokalemia, which are the two what they call valency 1 minerals, the more common minerals found in the body, and they will, you know, you can get, your heart just fails.
So coming back to it, Steve, no. Creatine, I don't believe it can. I don't believe it can if you're properly hydrated.
Well, the answer is no, except under certain circumstances it can.
Because like as in?
Like there's some people who are selling... some people are selling creatine already in water.
Oh, no, hang on.
Or is that not part of it?
Yeah. All right, now you've picked a fight. Yeah. All right, so here's the deal.
Yeah.
Okay. I think we spoke about scam supplements. I think it was USA back in the day that got fined in New Zealand, I'm pretty sure, $20,000 for selling what they said was creatine, you know, in a dropper.
Yeah.
Anytime you put creatine monohydrate into liquid, I don't care who you are. I don't care if you're selling RTDs.
Yep.
You do not put creatine monohydrate or any other form of creatine that I am aware of.
Well, any other form is not as effective.
Creatine ethyl esters, and I remember BSN back in the day had a major, you know, blow up with regards to a creatine ethyl ester. It is not the gold standard. And again, we go back to Richard Kreider.
Yeah.
My understanding is, and again, talking with Richard, creatine monohydrate is the gold standard.
It is.
There is no need to mess around with ethyl esters or any other form of creatine. It breaks down into creatinine.
Yep.
And creatinine is toxic.
It can be, yeah.
So if someone's putting creatine into liquid, and even if you do it yourself, so let's say you make a shake, a protein shake or something like that, my old adage for Steve was that you need to drink it quickly, and I'm talking like within, you know, sort of half an hour.
Yeah.
I don't, and you're going to tell me because I don't know what it is. I have a feeling in the back of my mind that creatine degrades into creatinine or starts creating creatinine when given outside the body, like if it's put into a solution. Within 8 hours?
8 hours. Overnight they tried it,
and
it got to 50% levels of breakdown.
Right.
So they stopped after that because they said, well, that's just, that's already too much.
Yep.
So let's say you're trying to do the right thing. You've got an early start in the morning.
Yep.
You get your creatine and you put in the shaker the night before, shake it up. Yeah, I know. Let's say you do.
Okay.
And you head off to the gym and you're drinking on the way to the gym. That's not the way to do it.
No.
That's dangerous. So no, it doesn't damage your kidneys unless you mess with it. And
so therefore,
yeah.
So if creatine is taken correctly, which means that it is put effectively into your shake or into your mouth or into water and all the rest of it, and consumed relatively immediately, and immediately I'm talking sort of 20 to 30 minutes, no problem. You're not going to be, unless the product has been poor quality manufacture, and we'll get into my recommendation for manufacture of creatine. You shouldn't have a problem. So no problem. You're throwing me a curve.
Yeah, I know. It's sort of, we had to mention it because people can easily do it.
The number one thing that I look for personally as far as creatine is concerned is purity. And the number one impurity that I'm concerned with is creatinine. It is toxic, and it can. Okay, so what does it do in the body, Steve? Let's say if you get a poor quality creatine, or let's say if you happen to have a supplement, you don't realise it's got creatine in there, and you're leaving it storing for 12 hours overnight. What is the potential side effects?
It's nephrotoxic. In other words, it damages the nephrons of the kidneys.
Oh.
Yeah, and if you went to the doctor and you're worried about your kidney function, they would give you an EGFR, which is glomerular filtration rate test, and they'd measure your creatinine levels. And creatinine levels, if they're too high, it means you're not clearing it, and it becomes toxic.
Right.
So there's two great kidney markers, the most common ones too.
Yeah.
So while creatinine You know, and people will say, well, but if I take creatine, won't it turn into creatinine? And the answer is yes, but it can be recycled.
Yeah.
So your body's in control.
Yeah.
So your body will take over. If it's sitting in a fridge, it's just going to make it can't be detoxified.
That's right.
So that's the difference.
Yep.
So you can take up to 30 grams a day correctly, and
of
it won't
creatine monohydrate?
Yep, and it won't affect your kidneys at all.
30
no
grams
adverse
a day.
effects.
Wow, 30 grams.
Yeah, 30 grams. That's the highest they tested.
I don't know. Well, and so they didn't test above that.
No.
So we don't actually know what the toxicity marker is for creatine.
No, but you've got to remember that for many, many years, humans have eaten animals. And they haven't regulated.
And animals have eaten humans too.
They have too.
Huh?
They have.
It's not a one-way street, brother.
It's not. I've seen Jaws.
Yeah.
That's the body's got used to consuming lots of creatine.
And you know what? That's what I say to vegans as well too. It's like, don't eat animals. I said, why? They'll eat you. I said, eat them before they eat you. That's the way to go. They can. Sorry,
they absolutely can.
Yeah.
Now I've got a question for you here. Another scary one.
Yeah.
Does creatine cause hair loss or baldness?
Well, Steve.
Yeah.
It's something very near and dear to my heart.
Our hearts. Yep, I'll just got to give you, because you've got to remember there's a lot of guys that go to the gym and they take creatine and they become bald.
Yeah, but hang on, Steve. My favourite saying is correlation and causation.
Yeah,
I mean, they could be bald anyway.
Yep.
They could be using anabolic steroids or certain ones that may accelerate hair loss.
Yeah, they do.
But you look at it, not everyone that takes anabolic steroids is going to go bald because some people don't have that gene.
Correct.
So, right? So
that's exactly right.
So if you've got the gene, in other words, if you can, no. I say no. Because the same reason as we said before, it doesn't affect hormones, Steve, and it's typically testosterone converting to DHT, which is the reason for baldness.
That's exactly right. Because you've got to remember, a lot of people that go to the gym take steroids as well.
Sure.
So, as you say, correctly point out, correlation doesn't mean causation, and there's no evidence that this causes baldness.
Yeah.
So, another one, does it cause muscle cramping or dehydration? That's another myth.
No.
Yeah,
so, in terms then, Steve, would you recommend, okay, so it won't cause dehydration or muscle cramp, but will taking creatine, will it put an additional load on the body's water? Or is that a myth?
That's a myth too.
Because and here's one where I got done. I used to say, people used to come in and I'd say, just make sure you're staying properly hydrated, consume a bit of extra water. Now, if people are already in a dehydrated state and they're taking creatine, will it exacerbate the problem?
It won't exacerbate the problem.
There you go.
It doesn't.
So that's somewhere where I'm wrong, Steve. I always used to say it was worse.
No, it won't, because it'll in fact make you hold on to a bit more water, so as you become more hydrated anyway.
And that was where I'm talking when I was a young man, Steve, in the mid-90s, but probably actually early 2000s. But that's where I thought, obviously, if you've got more how would you say, more resources requiring water, because we know that creatine monohydrate, it has an affinity with water and it's hydroscopic and all the rest of it, that there'll be less water available to do other processes in your body. So I'm wrong.
Yeah, because it'll hold on to water.
I don't like to admit that I'm wrong.
No, it's rare, of course, but
no, not according to my wife. Anyway.
All right. Now here's a question for you: can you give it to your sons?
Can I?
Yeah.
Yeah, I do.
Okay.
But the interesting thing, and he's only 3.5. No, I'm kidding.
3.5?
No, look. Under Australian, okay, let me answer this legally.
Yeah.
Legally, no. In fact, most supplements should not be given to anybody under the age of 15, just simply because, they're young, they're growing, and look, for the most part, if their diet is adequate, they don't need it. However, for specialty, like I'm talking about higher level athletes or children that have a huge demand, I always look at it this way. If you're giving them a quality protein, for example, and again, we mentioned this the other day, most protein that young kids are getting, typically, they have cereal in the morning, they have an apple for morning tea, maybe, what have you, they might get some ham on their lunch. The only protein they're getting, typically, is from dairy sources, Steve, which you and I both have a bugbear about, but cheese and yogurt, the only real protein they're getting is at night. Now, if they're putting additional demand on their body other than just, and look, kids put huge demands on their body, then actually incorporating a little bit more protein is not a bad thing. As far as creatine is concerned, it's performance. It's designed, look, I don't know of too many kids that are using creatine, to be honest. Maybe some sprinting, some kids that do sprinting might use it. But I don't have a problem with it so long as it's done in moderation.
I'm a
and under
healthcare
supervision.
professional, and I've told people, kids to give them creatine because it helps them dramatically.
Yep.
And the studies
How does it
back
help
me
them,
up.
Steve?
Well, with the performance.
Yeah.
As you said, the sprinting and that sort of thing. If they're doing running, even playing soccer with the high intensity things.
Yep.
So it'll help them. There's no evidence to say it's dangerous for kids, and also kids are already on creatine if they're eating meat.
Yep.
So there's no problem with that. So here's another myth that it's coming up. Because people feel bloated, does it increase fat mass?
No.
That's an easy one, isn't it?
No.
Yeah.
No. That one's a someone who doesn't know anything about anything.
Exactly. And
look, and it gets people to get fearful, right? I mean,
because it causes weight gain.
Sure. But weight, I mean, you've got muscle weight, you've got water weight, which is typically what it's doing immediately is water weight, right? So, I mean, I remember I used to go on to creatine load, which we'll get to in a minute.
What's the next question?
And I used to put on about 5 kilos probably within the space of about a week.
Yep.
So, and that was not muscle, it was water. So...
Yep. I know it's really an interesting one, but no, it doesn't increase fat mass. In fact, there's the evidence. It's not significant, but it does slightly decrease fat mass.
But the reason why it would increase fat mass is because it's supporting and enhancing muscle mass, which obviously has an increase in your basal metabolic rate. And if you increase that, then you're burning more calories.
Yeah, and you do more exercise on this.
Yeah.
So, it's slightly decreases.
So it works that way too,
Yeah. Now, the great question here is a loading phase required?
So funny. So when I first started, it was 20 grams. So for the average, guy, sort of 80 to 100 kilos, it was 20 grams a day for 5 days. It might have been 7 days.
Yeah.
7 days. And then 5 to 10 grams a day thereafter. Typically, I'd recommend guys throw it into their post-workout shake.
Yeah.
Because
we'll get to that.
And this is funny because a lot of people say, is creatine sport-specific? And that's a term that I coined, Steve. Sport-specific meaning you take it before you get a result. You take a pre-workout before. You take caffeine before, and then you go train. You take now citrulline's interesting because you do get an enhanced nitric oxide, but it's actually over time. Same with beta alanine as well too, but it's actually more about creating H+ ions, which actually build up over 30 days. So sport specific, even acetyl L-carnitine, people take it directly before they train. Actually, if you've got acetyl in the body, it doesn't really matter when you take it. I mean, sure, it's nice to take because you remember that you've got some, but creatine is not sport specific that I am aware of. What about creatine phosphate? Anyway, and we can talk about the other forms of creatine, Steve.
Yeah, okay. they're not as exciting, but they're right.
So the old saying, and again, Steve, I'm going back to when I was young and just new, but that creatine monohydrate did not have a sports-specific effect. In other words, you couldn't take it an hour before training and get the benefits of it, that it actually need to be absorbed and stored into the muscle, into the body, and then it would have its effect.
We've got a lot around timing coming up. There's a whole paper on timing here.
Okay. And again, Steve, I'm going on old, what I like to say is legacy, and because I haven't refreshed it,
that's right.
Some of this legacy thinking could be wrong. But post-workout, sort of 5 to 10 grams. I used to err on, a gram per kilo of body weight. That was kind of what I just used to use.
A gram per kilo?
Per 10 kilos.
Oh, it's
so sorry. So for every 10 kilos, you'd have a gram. So if you're 50 kilos, 5 grams. If you're, 40 kilo kid, 4 grams. If you're a 100 kilo athlete, 10 grams post-training after loading. Now, then I heard, just take 10 grams a day, every day, once a day, put it after training, and you don't need to load. So, and that's kind of what I went to. Just use it post-training.
Yep.
About 1 gram for every 10 kilos of body mass.
All right. Well, they've actually studied this. What they did was they gave 3 grams a day for 28 days or 20 grams a day for 6 days. And so what they did was they measured the amount of creatine, and they both went up around 20% after 6 days. So
the loading group was wasting their money.
Wasting their money on 20 grams. So 3 to 5 was enough to get 20%. Yeah,
3 to 5.
3 to 5.
So my gram per kilo is not true.
You could be eating it in your diet too.
Huh?
If you eat steak or something.
So you reckon?
Yeah.
120 kilo monster 5 grams a day is probably all you need.
Yeah, probably.
And anything more than that's probably a waste.
And I'll read you this. In summary, according to evidence, indicates that you do not have to load creatine. Lower daily dose of creatine supplementation are fine.
And when you think about it, Steve,
the
average natural production of creatine for the average human, let's say someone around 80 kilos, that's, sort of 160 to 200 pounds, let's say 80 to 100 kilos for males, they're producing about 1 gram, 1,000 milligrams of creatine through their diet a day. So we're talking about if you're taking 3 grams, which to me, Steve, even though I know just what you said, and I'm about to start I'm taking a minimum of 5 grams a day.
That's fine.
That's all right.
It says 3 to 5.
So bugger off, and you can't tell me anything else. But that's still 300% more creatine than what the body produces.
Exactly.
And this is just funny, right? You get to this, as we always say, the apex point.
Yep.
So you go up, you get to 3 grams. Anything more than that, you're wasting your money. And I'm up here.
Yeah, but I mean, it might go up by another 2 or 3%. It might go up just marginally, but
return on investment, Steve. It's all about min maxing, right?
Yeah. 3 to 5 grams, what they say.
Wow.
Yeah, so incredible. So that's
okay. So there you go. I'm completely. I mean, I did hear that loading was a waste of time.
Yeah.
And was that Rick Ryder that said that?
Well, he's one of the authors of this paper.
But I didn't read that. So when was that paper published?
2021.
Oh, well, there you go. That's why I haven't read it.
And Richard's in there, and also Scott Forbes, if you know him, he's pretty famous with this the creatine as well.
So
a whole heap of authors.
3 to 5 grams. Effectively, it doesn't matter whether you're a 120 kilo monster or you're a 60 kilo fledgling, right?
Oh, if you're 160, you may have 5 grams. That's still
but Steve, as I said, you talk to most bodybuilders, more is better, right?
Yeah.
Which is, we've got to get them out of that mentality. But most guys, I reckon, would be taking a minimum of 10 grams of creatine a day.
They can if they want to, they want to buy it off us.
No,
that's bad.
You know what? Everything's always about doing the right things. Steve.
Oh, is it?
Okay. Yeah. The love of money is the root of all kinds of evil. Just remember that.
Yeah.
So yeah, absolutely. I think 5 grams. I reckon, and you're tapping out. You're probably more than what you need.
It's probably more than what you need. Absolutely.
All right.
And what about if you're old? Can you take this stuff?
Yes. In fact, brilliant for the brain, Steve.
Oh,
this is something that
stealing my thunder. There's a big paper on the brain coming up.
Yeah.
Cognitive function. Look at that.
Creatine.
It's really good for old people.
Absolutely.
Really good.
Absolutely. In fact, it's one of those sorts of things that I would say, along with your omega oils, and again, I'd highly recommend, ones not from fish. I don't mind fish if you're eating fresh fish, but getting capsules of rancid fish oil, no. Get your omegas from plants, things like sea buckthorn and other exciting forms.
Yep, exactly.
Won't mention where you may be able to get them from, but that's good. But creatine, because you need the oil for the oily structures of the brain, right? Which have shown to be incredibly beneficial. So omegas are super, super important. Creatine also has a significant impact on cognitive function.
Incredibly so. I mean, really, really good. I've got a paper coming up later which is titled Creatine Loading for Chronic Migraine.
For migraine?
Yeah, I read this.
What? Wow. Is that based on dehydration in the brain?
Oh, it's very interesting what it's based on.
Because I can't actually... How do you dehydrate your brain? Can you dehydrate your brain?
Well, you don't dehydrate your brain. In this case, you get energy defects in parts of the brain due by... in this case, it was due by excessive drugs in the brain, particularly opioids. Because opioids... one of the side effects of painkillers is pain? Did you know that?
I knew that.
All right, we'll skip to the brain one. But it really is interesting because if you take a painkiller like an opioid... They work on the mu receptors, which is the opioid receptors, obviously, as the name would suggest. And they also have a secondary effect, some of them, on the monoamines in the brain, like norepinephrine. So if you take a Palexia drug, which is an opioid, a strong one, and it knocks out norepinephrine, which is also a signal for pain. So you might think, this is good, it knocks out pain in 2 ways. It does. But norepinephrine keeps the blood vessels tight because it's like adrenaline. Adrenaline and noradrenaline are the same similar molecules. They keep the blood vessels tight. So if you knock that out, the blood vessels dilate, and that can trigger migraines.
Wow.
Well, like when you take Viagra, your blood vessels dilate in your brain. You can get migraines from Viagra. Yeah.
It's funny because when I take Viagra, Tony gets a headache.
Yes.
How does that work, Steve? What's the biochemical pathway for that? But I think in terms of that, that's really awesome. You know, I think it's brilliant.
Tony gets a headache.
No, no, I'm very disappointed.
No.
Anyway.
So let's go back to the brain. Phew, dodge that bullet.
Yeah.
So you
That's
get
what
these.
she said.
You don't want any more kids.
No, no, they can't have them.
You got to dodge the bullets.
Yeah,
that's right. That's right. We talked about that.
Yeah.
What are we talking about? That's right. Migraines. So this is published in Cellophagia. It says, can creatine loading it says creatine loading for chronic migraine ? So it's a question mark, and they're basically hypothesised, and there's studies now underway, that because of the effect in the brain, this balances the ATP in the brain, the energy levels in the brain, that it can help dramatically with migraines.
It's unbelievable.
Yeah, I know.
So would that work for all migraine sufferers, Steve, or not?
Depends on the trigger of the migraine.
I was going to say, because obviously there are different types
There are.
Yep.
There's about 300 different types.
Oh, wow.
Don't ask me to name them. But the main...
So you've got like a 0.33 recurring percentage chance that it's going to help you?
Yes.
No, but there might be, I mean, there's 300 things, but there might be similar mechanisms.
There are.
So would you have an estimate of how many people are getting migraines could try creatine? Because I guarantee you,
about 25%.
there are probably people that are listening to this that are going, you know, family member, a friend, or, you know, me, I've had migraines forever. And I really feel for people that get them regularly, right? So creatine could be something to try.
Could be.
And we're just talking, what, 5 grams, 3 grams a day?
3 to 5 a day.
Wow.
I mean, that's pretty... Because you've got to remember that the migraines are a real pain in the arse to treat because...
No, wrong.
Pain in the head to treat.
That's right.
I mean, because the old way of treating them was high-dose aspirin.
Right, which is blood thinner, right?
Blood thinner, yeah. But the reason why they need the old-style drugs for migraines is because it's you heard of COX-2 and COX-1 inhibition?
Yeah,
COX-2 is the inflammation for the joints, but the one that triggers migraines is COX-1. So to knock out COX-1, you need the older-style aspirin-based drugs like Ketorolac is a famous one for migraines.
Or white willow, Steve.
Yeah, white willow. Exactly, but
nature knows best.
Exactly, white willow is terrific for the migraines. So is our feverfew, another one. But these drugs, there's a new style of drugs coming out now. These anti-calcitonin and gene-related peptide drugs, which is the chemical. I know it's the
that
chemical.
Sounds scary.
I know. And it's the chemical that keeps your blood vessels nice and toned. And if calcitonin and gene-related peptide gets too high, you get too much vasodilation.
Oh, yeah.
And that triggers the migraines.
Well, it's funny because Tony, for a very long period of time, do you know what used to keep her headaches at bay?
Right.
Coffee.
Coffee.
In the morning.
Yeah. Well,
if she didn't have a coffee by sort of 9:30, 10, she would get a headache.
Yeah. I mean, caffeine is a well-known pain suppressant, especially for headaches. That's
but
why.
Also vasodilator as well too, right?
Well, it's a vasoconstrictor.
Constrictor, I should say.
Because if you go
which is so funny, which is why a lot of people use a caffeine before they go to the gym.
Yeah.
Now, look, I understand there's the pros and cons. You know, you train harder, you lift more weight, but it is a vasoconstrictor versus, and this is where we're obviously looking at nitric oxides. You know, the purists out there that go, no, I must only have the best to improve muscle. Probably avoid too much caffeine.
Avoid too much caffeine, absolutely.
Yeah.
Because it's vascular. And you'll find this if you went to a pharmacy tomorrow and you can find headache tablets with caffeine in it.
Yeah. Because
it's an active ingredient. I know one brand, I won't talk about brands, but it's got paracetamol and caffeine in it.
Wow.
Yeah, so it's a well-known headache treatment because it constricts the blood vessels down in your brain. You know, you can use other things that boost serotonin in the brain. That constrict the blood vessels. The classic group of drugs are called the triptans, like elatriptan and sumatriptan, which are a class of drugs, which are anti-migraine drugs.
Wow!
So it's well known. So creatine might be able to help this sort of thing instead of going on these, you know, potentially like Ketorolac, and they're very nephrotoxic. Now, in fact, Ketorolac has a warning that you can't take it for more than 6 days, or your kidneys start to fail. So you know, if you're having a lot of migraines. And you're having a lot of these drugs. And remember, what does creatine do to your kidneys? Absolutely nothing.
Yeah.
So there's some really good benefits for this. As a, you know, we always think of creatine as a performance thing in the gym.
Absolutely.
But it's good for your body as well. There's other uses.
Yep.
And cognition is one too.
That's
and your
great.
brain.
Yeah.
So It increases ATP because it increases ATP levels in your brain by 15%. There's more energy in your brain.
Yeah,
you're just going to
as I say as well too. If that's something that's a concern, creatine and omegas, I reckon, should be something that you should definitely have a look at.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Okay,
right.
Another question for you.
Yeah.
Is this only good for going to the gym, or can you take it for running and other things?
Well, definitely for running and other things, 100%. I mean, and we know that especially anaerobic activity, does it improve aerobic much, Steve?
A little bit, yeah, because you've still got to make that ATP back again. Because, if you're running in a race, okay, you're going at a bit of intensity, you're at the level of how much ATP you can make.
Yeah.
Okay, and eventually, if you're running a marathon and then you go for a bit of a sprint, you kind of hit the wall.
Yeah.
And that's when you just run out of energy.
Yeah.
And so if you've got creatine in your system, you can do that a little bit further.
Yeah.
So it delays hitting the wall.
And the other one, especially, I mean, do you remember those guys where they hit the wall and the runners, and then their muscles completely and they're like on the ground and like they fall over and all the rest of it. Do you reckon creatine would help with that?
Yeah, it would.
Do you reckon beta-alanine would be more effective? Because with the H plus ions, Steve, to buffer acid.
If it's the acid, but it's probably the depletion of minerals.
Is that what it is?
Probably potassium.
So this is where you need potassium. I always wondered, because I always looked at them and went, I wonder if they had beta-alanine. I wonder if they would keep going.
The other classic one they've tested is magnesium. Magnesium stops calcium contracting muscles, the off switch.
So it's like the teeth, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so if you're depleted in magnesium because you've been running for 4 hours, then your muscles just cramp up and you have massive cramps. So it's magnesium or potassium. They're the intracellular minerals. And what creatine does is it gives you more fluid in the cells, more room to hold those cations, those minerals.
So if you had creatine and an electrolyte drink, if you're an endurance-based athlete, you should be able to perform better for longer.
Absolutely.
And again, I highly recommend beta-alanine as well too. I think that's brilliant as well too for buffering lactic acid.
It does.
And actually put it back into the Krebs cycle.
Yeah, it's a great antacid thing, the beta-alanine. That's the one that gives you the tingles.
Yeah, not everybody likes it, but if you're an athlete, you don't care.
You don't care.
Yeah.
Suck it up. Okay, next question. Is creatine only effective for males?
No. Good for females.
I was trying to build up the suspense. No, it's females as well.
No,
so it doesn't matter.
Yes, it's good for everyone.
Of course it is. No matter what sex you identify as.
Yeah.
That the polite
That's fine. Absolutely. Yep. I mean, go ahead. If you want to be whatever.
Yep. Now I'm going to ask the $1 million question.
If I answer it, you got to give me $1 million.
No, $2 million for the hair.
Oh, yes. Thank you.
You need that. Are other forms of creatine similar or superior to monohydrate? And is creatine stable in solutions or beverages? Oh, the second part we've already answered. Damn.
Stay up with it, Steve. My understanding is that ultimately, and after all the hype and bluster, and this is where novel companies with marketing hype, and this is what I hate about all of our opposition, because they're all the same. Just come to ATP. No, I'm kidding. But this is where most companies have no research, no science, and they base everything on hype. And this is what happened with creatine monohydrate. My understanding is that creatine monohydrate, even now, 25 years, 30 years plus it coming out, creatine monohydrate is the gold standard, and that the other forms of creatine, and again, Steve, this could be legacy thinking, that the other forms of creatine monohydrate showed less effective absorption and more problems with creatinine.
Exactly right. And
give me my $1 million.
Absolutely. Now, the paper we read there has got some references in it, 187. So just those questions are from 187 references. Right.
So the big one would be creatine ethyl ester.
Yeah.
What about, and you might not have it, I don't know, what about creatine, what was the one I said before?
Phosphate?
Phosphate.
But the reason why they gave that, and creatine nitrate, is they're the two formulas, because the phosphate will give you the phosphate group to make the ATP. The P is phosphate. It doesn't work like that, because you've got so many phosphates lying around, they've just got to be stuck back on, so there's no benefit.
I think that's where, again, back in my mind there, that's why I think when people, I used to say, they'd go, I've got to take my creatine before my workout. I'm like, no, it doesn't work like that, right? And I said, maybe, and I think I said back then, and I think I recanted that statement later, maybe creatine phosphate because of the phosphate. I said maybe because you get the creatine with the phosphate, maybe the phosphate might be a good thing to take pre-workout, but it's not.
No, it's not.
No.
So that was quite a cool paper. Now you mentioned that we've talked around a lot about timing of taking creatine.
Yep.
And you're right. and I'll read a quote from another paper. This is published in Nutrients. It's called Timing of Creatine Supplementation Around Exercise, a Real Concern ? So that's the title of the paper. And I'll just go straight to the conclusion.
Well. I mean, I've said it. I mean, look, if I'm wrong, Steve, don't be afraid to tell me I'm wrong.
No, I'll quote this. It says, as it stands, adopting creatine timing specifically according to when training is performed, but is not currently supported by solid evidence and should not be a real concern for now. So in other words, as long as you take it around exercise time before or after, it's fine. It seems to work better than if you take it away from exercise. And whether it's after it or before it doesn't matter.
Two creatine myths that I want to cover, Steve. You may or may not know the answer. Now, I did ask Richard Kreider.
Oh, did he know?
One, yes. And that was, I said, is it true, Stephen? Because the big thing about caffeine.
Yeah.
So a big thing was, if you take creatine, because it uses water, if you take it with caffeine, you're pissing it out because you're going to be dehydrated and it's going to pull the creatine out of the body. And I said, but Stephen, I think I read the original creatine, some of the studies, some of the very, very first ones looking at muscle biopsies of creatine, they actually took it with espresso coffee.
Yeah.
So they actually took it with, and he said, and I don't want to quote him, and Richard, if you're listening, because he's a friend of the podcast, I'm pretty sure, and again, I could be wrong, but just has no impact on the uptake of creatine, and you are fine to consume coffee. Yeah. And the other big one was alcohol. If you drink alcohol, you're just destroying your creatine. No, you're probably going to really screw up your hormones, especially your testosterone. That's probably the reason to limit the amount of alcohol. Yeah. But no, it's not going to. You're not going to piss out all your creatine.
No, you won't. It doesn't work like that. They're different mechanisms. You've got to remember the diuresis occurs from the bloodstream. Okay, so let's take you take a diuretic. Call it caffeine, call it coffee, call it whatever you want. That works at the kidneys, okay? Lower part of your back, and it filters through from your bloodstream. If your creatine is stored in your muscles, it's not technically in your bloodstream, is it? No. Because if it was hanging around in your bloodstream, it would have an effect.
So do you know how long creatine takes from when you ingest it to when it stores in the muscle?
Sure, I know exactly because I've got it here. It's 60 minutes.
60 minutes?
And it'll last up to 3 hours. No, actually, 4 hours it lasts in your body. That's at highly measurable levels.
Hang on, then. So are we talking about taking it pre-workout to enhance training again?
Well, you can, but the study here shows it doesn't really matter because the total creatine load in your body still remains. Like, yes, you have a half-life of it, but 4 hours is a very long half-life.
Yeah, but Steve, what happens if I'm training, let's say, at 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock in the afternoon, come home, and this leads on to my next question, because the old saying was, and I think there was a tech company, I won't name, that was focused on muscle, and they had a huge... back in the day, this is back in the day, right? Yeah. I mean, this is back when, and they were talking about the benefits of using dextrose with creatine to enhance an insulin response, which they said had a greater uptake into the muscle cell of creatine.
Yeah, that's theoretically true, but I don't know if that would really have a major effect on the body. Theoretically, because amino acids and amino acids with insulin can increase its growth, but creatine is easily absorbed. It's a very small molecule.
It's interesting. I personally like the idea, and I'm now thinking, okay, but I like personally having protein, carbohydrates, typically high glycemic carbohydrates, to create insulin, which is more anabolic than testosterone, Steve.
By a mile.
Post-workout with creatine. I think that's a great meal. Now, depending on how heavy I am, I'd probably take 40 grams of protein in. And because I'm not, I'm certainly not as lean as I used to be, and I need to get leaner, but I'd typically take probably around about double. I'd take maybe sort of 60 to 80 grams of carbohydrates post-training to replenish glycogen. And a lot of the times I might even take a little bit less, Steve, to be honest, just so that I'm not getting any... And again... These are old things, Steve, that I used to do because I was always worried about protein neogenesis. I was worried about the oxidization of my protein to be used as energy, especially if you have a really big workout, right? Yeah. Insulin's anabolic. So the theory was use a dextrose or a multidextrin with 40 grams, so let's say 60 grams of carbs, 40 grams of protein, 10 grams of creatine post-training, right? Yeah. So that's maybe not necessary?
Well, you don't really need to, because the studies where they've measured creatine, they've just had creatine. They didn't have sugar with it. Will sugar help the absorption, all that sort of stuff?
But it sounds like it doesn't really matter.
No,
because it sounds like the absorption of creatine is actually high anyway.
Very good, because it's protein.
Okay, I need to come back to this other question. So if the half-life of creatine they're showing shows in the body for 4 hours, so then it could be sport-specific, Steve.
It could be, yeah. There's a paper here that shows that if you take it before exercise, an hour before, it does increase the performance of the exercise, the muscle building, but it doesn't really. But it doesn't really matter.
What do you mean it doesn't really matter?
Well, I'll read the conclusion. They said, look, as it stands, adopting creatine timing specifically, according to when training is performed, is not currently supported by solid evidence and should not be considered a real concern for now.
But didn't that just contradict that statement?
It depends on what you're taking it for, though.
Muscle mass.
Muscle mass?
Yeah, building muscle. Well, both.
Oh.
I mean, if you're going to go to the gym, right, and let's say that you can lift 100 kilo bench press, Steve, which I do very easily and multiple times.
My arms.
But yeah, let's just say, right, you want to lift, and guys, especially, and girls that are training, maybe powerlifters or what have you, and they want to go, right, I want to lift 105. I want to break my personal best, right? Are they going to be served by taking creatine an hour, 2 hours before they train? Because then they actually, and this is what I said before, it sounds like this is, I need to maybe eat some humble pie here. It sounds like it may be sports specific, Steve.
It can be, yeah, timing. For not for muscle building, but for strength, yeah, absolutely.
Well, but Steve, okay, so no. So here, listen.
Yeah.
Because if you're lifting more weight, you're putting the body under more load, which is going to build more muscle. So therefore, it's not only sports specific, Steve, improving performance, but it's also going to build more muscle.
Yeah, it will. If you use it that way.
You're confusing me.
Okay, so if you want to lift more weight, then yes, definitely take it before you exercise, about an hour beforehand.
Yeah.
But if you want to get total creatine in the muscle, then it doesn't matter when you take it, as long as it's around exercise.
But then, okay, so therefore, if I take it before I train, I'm getting the sports-specific benefit of increasing ATP and improving my lift, and I'm also, by default, getting more creatine into my muscles.
Absolutely.
So therefore, if I'm looking for bang for my buck, I want to take 3 to 5. Did it mention how much creatine people were taking in that study?
There was 5 grams in this study.
Okay, so let's just round it out here. 5 grams of creatine. What was the apex point? Where did it show the maximum concentration?
For those who are watching, we can put this graph up.
Yeah, but for those that are listening, which is 98.9%.
Yes, I suppose it is.
Steve, again,
60 minutes. If you look at B there, under there, that's 60 minutes. You can see the where it peaked right in the middle of your training things. If you took it 60 minutes beforehand.
Case closed, Steve.
That's
like
good.
60 minutes
so
pre-training. So 5 grams of creatine 60 minutes before training is the pinnacle.
To get more out of your exercise, absolutely.
But you're also, at the same time, Steve, you're getting the creatine
in the muscle.
So I've been wrong this whole time. Damn it.
It's not the end of the world. Because
No, because people are still getting benefit, I appreciate, but it does have, Steve, this is what I said before, it does have a sports-specific role. Yeah. I can't believe I've been so wrong for so long.
Well, I mean, you saw the graph.
Tony won't be surprised at all.
Tony won't be surprised. As I said, and I'll just read what they know from the paper. It says, supplementation close to exercise appeared to be superior, enhancing muscle total creatine content compared to when supplementation is taken far away. So in other words, as long as you get circulation to the muscles either close to the exercise, it'll boost it. But to get more performance, more weights in the gym, take it beforehand.
Steve, you know what this means?
What?
We've got a new performance product we've got to work on.
Ooh.
We have to.
Goody.
I've been so wrong.
Oh, it's all right. But I mean...
for our competitors that are listening to this, just ignore we said that.
Yeah. But I mean, I don't...
Maybe go with acetyl. Creatine ethyl ester. I think that stuff's really good.
Put it in water beforehand. No,
so funny.
That's dangerous.
Because someone came to me the other day. We've got a new CEO on here, and he's like, "Gee, these people seem to be doing everything that we're doing." I'm like, "Yeah, that's because we did it first."
Yes, exactly. It is a bit like that.
Yeah. Anyway, just forget about that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
there you go. You know what? I love it when I learn something, Steve, which is...
But until I got that study, it's 2021, that study. Until I saw that study.
So
I
there's
thought,
no way I could have possibly have not, Steve. You're not making me feel any better. I hate it. And look, this is the beautiful thing about science. I think this is a fantastic opportunity. I mean, again, in the industry, back in the day, the supplement then was considered to be, right up there with education information. Obviously, not that we're the world authorities, but like staying abreast of all this stuff. This is great.
Yeah.
Because and again, for anybody out there who's using creatine, use it pre.
Use it pre. Now I've got here's some.
An hour, exactly 5 grams 1 hour before. Like seriously.
That's it. That's the optimum.
Steve.
Yep.
Oh, we can get into this. Let's get onto this after here. But what else should we take it with? So let's look at creating the perfect. Because the old adage was, for the guys and the girls that were really looking at enhancing muscle, mass, there was a bracketing technique. Have you ever heard of the bracketing?
Yes.
So let's research that and let's maybe do another podcast on that. The ultimate supplementation guide to enhancing muscle growth.
All right. Can we, there's no limit on money?
No.
There's no limit on taste?
No. Well, when I say limit on money, maybe, like that people could afford it. Like the person on average could, not like $2 million hair supplements that you're going out to buy, Steve.
I mean, if we can put herbs in there that are quite expensive.
Yeah, let's do it.
All right,
let's bloody do it.
All right.
Oh, I'm excited because you know what? This is why I loved like that. EAS. This is why I like Bill Phillips as well too, because he's always experimental and applied science and knowledge and all the rest of it. And some of the stuff is freaking expensive, right? But let's just do it. And for people who are how would you say, purists and want the absolute best, well, let's work on that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I've got some quickies for you because I know we're running out of a bit of time.
Okay.
Here's some quickies for you. Cognitive function. It is great for cognition too. This is creatine. This is all creatine. It helps with diabetes management.
Wow.
Yeah. This is a paper. The title of the paper is Creatine in Health and Disease, authored by none other than Richard Kreider.
He is a genius, that bloke. Like seriously, guys, if you're listening, and Richard, if you're listening, mate, all power to you, mate. You're the man.
Can we talk about his book?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, he's got a great book on sports nutrition.
Yeah, is that the one that we actually promoted at our summit?
Yeah.
It's a great book.
Brilliant.
Yeah. So pump it up.
All right. If you've got any heart disease, it can benefit heart disease patients, specifically ischemic heart disease. In other words, like a blocked artery.
Right.
It's great for that as well. There are diseases that I'll skip over, like muscular dystrophy, Huntington's disease, very good for that as well.
Wow.
Now, the $56 million question is, can it be taken during pregnancy? Yes, it can.
Wow. My default is no.
But caution,
you can't even breathe during pregnancy.
Because you've got to remember that during pregnancy they're consuming meat. So you've just got to, run it by a practitioner.
Absolutely. Everything we're talking about today, if you're going to change your diet or lifestyle, and I think we have that as an ongoing disclaimer, right? Seriously, guys, we're all individuals.
Absolutely.
Not me, I'm not an individual.
No.
Anyway, but
that's
sorry,
right.
Monty Python's fine. Okay.
I didn't know that this is one new one for me, that creatine is also anti-inflammatory. It knocks out some of the toll-like receptors, which are inflammatory markers, and interleukin-6. Didn't know that. Oh. It has some properties as well. Can we say that?
I don't know what you're saying.
Anti-cancer properties.
Wow.
Yeah, so it's good like that sort of thing. Very good for chronic fatigue syndrome. I'm just skipping through these.
Yeah.
Great for reproductive health. Good for your sperm.
Is it?
Yeah.
Is that because of the arginine?
The arginine components. Yep. Yeah, absolutely. And also the energy of the little mighty's tail when they swim along.
Mine aren't so little. They're actually about the size of a real tadpole.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, you got 50 million of those that are coming out at once. That's interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, it's kind of like a swamp.
Remember that question we had now? Ask me anything.
Oh yeah.
That's we can't repeat that question.
Yeah, no.
But anyway, it's great for fertility too. So skin health is another one too. But it comes back to, speaking of sperm. The last question was, does it increase the size of your anatomy?
Yeah, old fella.
Yes.
I think I know the answer to this, Steve.
What is it?
Because I've been taking creatine for years.
And what's the answer?
Well, I used to shake it, now I kick it.
Oh.
No. The true answer is, unfortunately, no.
It doesn't. I wish it did.
Yeah.
It doesn't.
No.
It doesn't help that side.
No.
Helps every other muscle in your body, but not the one that's not
Not the
really
love muscle.
That's right.
Yeah.
Can we say love muscle?
I don't know. We just did.
Yeah. All right. That's good. All right. Well, that's about it with the science. But isn't it amazing? and the non-science.
I was going to say, there was a lot of non-science in there. Well, you know what, Steve? I love creatine, and for anyone listening to the show who's bothered to listen to the show, obviously you're interested probably in enhancing muscle gain first and foremost, but you may have passed this on, or someone may have passed this on to you to listen to some of the other benefits of creatine as well too. So, if you're interested, give creatine a go. It's relatively cost-effective. Last thing I wanted to mention is that what is considered to be the gold standard of creatine. Now, we have, and I've always, and when I was younger growing up and selling it, there was a couple of brands. There was Fine Still Creatine from the United States. I don't even know if they're still going anymore. And it was considered to be very pure and very good. And the other one was a German form of creatine called Creapure. Now, creatine monohydrate is creatine monohydrate. It comes down to a brand name. Why? And look, Fine Still, if you're still going, get in contact with me, because I absolutely loved your stuff. I don't know if they still are or aren't. And they were very high level of purity, and they proved it. Creapure is considered to be probably the gold standard in the world at the moment. It's just a trusted brand name. That they have got a great quality of creatine. There's no artificials. We look at the C of A's every time we buy it. We also send our stuff off for testing. Now, recently, I couldn't get Creapure creatine. And so we went out and we found another one. We sent that off to the labs for testing, and the first thing that we looked for was there any creatinine in there, and what was the percentage? Now, it was as good as the Creapure, but it doesn't have the trusted name.
Yeah.
So it's like anything, right?
Yeah.
So at the end of the day, there's a lot of creatines out there. There's a lot of bad creatines out there. There's a lot of creatines that have got a lot of other products. So unless you're buying from a trusted source, and again, a company that you believe in who's saying, look, we've tested it and we can prove it, and look, the proof is in the product as well too, because if you're getting good quality creatine, you shouldn't have any upsets, no kidney pains, none of that as well too. But Creapure is probably the gold standard.
Yeah, it is.
And probably the one that I'd recommend. So if you're looking for a good quality, creatine, and again, this is a free plug out. They haven't paid us for this or anything like that. Creapure is probably the creatine you want to be using.
That's interesting, isn't it?
Yeah,
it's true. And because not many people can go and test it themselves.
No. Well, we've got another one, and we've gone out and tested it, and we stand behind it.
Yep.
And as I said, it's great. But if you're just the average punter, out there and you're looking for one, make sure you get Creapure.
Good.
Yeah.
Oh, it's good.
And you trust the company. One of the things we actually went back to Creapure and said, we believe that people are buying a ton of Creapure, buying 4 tons of Chinese crushed up newspaper, and then they're blending it together.
Yeah.
And that's, again, this is where you've got to deal with reputable companies, because not everybody will be honest and integral. They'll use the brand name, but they'll license it. So again, I guess why we've got a loyal audience, because they trust us, right?
And so they should. We test it. Well, it's good. I think we've come to the end.
Well, I've learned something today. I'm going to be using my creatine before my training, and only 5 grams, and that's all you need.
That's all you need.
Well, there you go.
Richard has spoken.
Thanks, Steve.
No worries. Well, thanks.
We'll
See you next week.
We'll be back next week. Thank you all.
See you guys.
Bye.
Now,
you're very. I don't know what they call that. Do you know that? And they're not.
Okay.
Do you know she said it herself yesterday on the news? Did you not see it?
No, I didn't see it on the news.
Yep,
I was just ready to edit that out. But
no, don't edit it out. This is true. Sorry.
Sorry. We might have edited that bit out.
Yeah. Well, but,
absolutely.
You can cut that part. Whatever. Are you allowed to say that?
I don't know anymore.
I don't know.
If whatever.
You know what? I love everyone. I don't love Nazis.
No.